On behalf of Vietnam Veterans of America, I wish to honor us with the presence of Mr. Secretary McDonough.
Very nice. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Well, I thank you, John, very much. VVA Life Member number 29, National President for your 8th consecutive term and counting. I thank you for that very kind introduction. I thank you for your unwavering service to your fellow Vietnam vets. In fact, to all vets, and through them, by extension, to this great country. I thank you very, very much. And I thank you for your courageous service in Vietnam and the courageous fights that you fought when you got home. And to each of you, I say, on behalf of a grateful nation, thank you and welcome home. Let me also recognize Tom Burke, Minnesotan, and therefore family. Bill Meeks, Jack McManus. It's an honor to be here with you, all of you. As I said, welcome home. Welcome home. Thank you for your courageous service, your devotion to veterans in the years since. You've been in service to America in so many ways for so many years. Literally decades of relentless legislative fights related to Agent Orange exposure, as John's just referred to. Decades of advocating on the Hill and in your communities for all vets, something we saw intensely since August as you fought for our Afghan war vets. From veterans treatment courts to the 9/11 GI Bill to helping house homeless veterans, the continuing fight for a full accounting of our POWs and MIAs. Vietnam Veterans of America have done so much for this nation, not only in the jungles and the skies or the waters of Vietnam, but right here at home. I want to especially recognize one of the most invaluable VA offers, one of the most invaluable services VA offers veterans, our vet centers, your vet centers. When the Veterans Administration back then was coming up short, you stepped in, establishing community-based storefront counseling centers for vets. It's thanks to your initiative and then to your advocacy that today there are hundreds of thousands of vets, service members, family members benefiting from your 300, think of that, 300 vet centers across the country. It's thanks to you that vet centers never moved to VA campuses and instead expanded into communities where vets live and work. And it's thanks to you that vet centers are providing eligible veterans, active duty service members, including members of the National Guard and Reserve and their families, such a broad range of services. I see it every time I get on the road. I insist on going to a vet center. So I see it. But don't take my word for it. Navy Vietnam veteran Harry Collins in Lexington, Kentucky will tell you himself what the vet centers can do. At the vet center, Harry said, you have people who have walked the same ground. They've been there and done it. He will tell you that his vet center counselor, Carla Lovelace Tackett, saved his life. If it was not for her, I would not be here right now. I would have checked out. That's one story. That's your work. And that's just one life saved because of VVA. There are thousands and thousands like it. The great work reminds me of what President Biden often calls our most sacred obligation: to prepare and equip the troops we send into harm's way, and to care for them and their families when they come home. That's the promise we make to anyone signing up for military service. You take care of us, we'll take care of you. You fight for us, we'll fight for you. You have our backs, we'll have yours. When you come home, transition out of the service. Our nation as a whole makes that promise. But we at VA and VVA are among those most responsible for keeping that promise. So, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for all that you've done and you continue to do to keep that sacred obligation. Now, this year it's impossible not to notice the many who are no longer with us. In August, you lost one of your greatest voices. Veterans lost one of their greatest advocates when the giant Joe Galloway passed. At his memorial service down in Concord, where he was laid to rest, his beloved wife, Gracie, remembered how Joe would fight for veterans with the strength of his pen and his amazing writing. Joe Galloway's voice will echo through the ages and keep serving veterans and this country. We remember those we lost in the pandemic, now more than 745,000. I know you've lost many. They're your people. They're our people. Veterans we served and people who served them. And our hearts go out to all those they've left behind. At the same time, we remember there are many veterans, service members, family members out there right now enjoying this beautiful fall because of you. Because of people like members of the Greater Hartford VVA Chapter 120, who donated children's winter coats to South Windsor Human Services Department. Because of people like VVA members of Tucson Chapter 106, who raised money to help local veterans in need because of the pandemic. Or Clinton Township, Michigan, Chapter 154. Members and partners who showed great courage by keeping their food pantry open, supporting vets and their families during the height of the pandemic. Or your work bringing attention to state veterans' homes' COVID challenges. At the same time, VA people have been responding nonstop to COVID requirements in a host of ways. When PPE was running low, they invented reusable 3D printed PPE and got it straight to the front lines. When it wasn't safe for vets to come to the hospital, they cared for vets online, ramping up telehealth appointments from 2,500 per day in March 2020 to 45,000 per day a year later. And when the vaccine became available, they sprang into action and vaccinated millions of people. Now more than 3.9 million vets. More than half the nation's vets have been vaccinated. That work, yours and ours, translates into the one statistic that matters. lives saved, lives improved by the work that you do. But we all know that the work of the pandemic is far from over. That's why everyone needs to be vaccinated. I can't repeat this enough. Nearly every person dying from COVID right now is unvaccinated, meaning that right now nearly every COVID death is preventable. So I'm asking you now, please get vaccinated if you haven't already. Thanks to the Save Lives Act, all of you, your spouses, your caregivers can be vaccinated at VA safely, easily, free of charge. And get your booster shot at your local VAMC. Get a booster if you're 65 or over, got your second dose of Pfizer or Moderna more than 6 months ago, or if you have any underlying medical conditions. Get a booster if you got the J&J vaccine more than 2 months ago. The booster can be any of the vaccines authorized in the United States, Pfizer, Moderna, or J&J. Vaccination is the only way to end this pandemic and finally return to normal life. And while we desperately want our lives to return to normal, it's also important to recognize that some things aren't going back to the way they were. In fact, perhaps they shouldn't. Jack hit the nail on the head in his treasurer's report back in January. Jack wrote, "It's become apparent that we and future generations are changed forever." That's right. We are changed, Jack. VA has changed too. And the work we've done responding to the pandemic has forged us into a stronger and better department for all of our nation's vets. We won't go back to the old way of doing things. Telehealth and teleappeals are allowing us to meet vets where they want, when they want, in unprecedented ways. Outpatient trust scores rose to 90% this year, which in my mind should be the floor, not the ceiling. And it's vets of your era reporting the highest trust scores for our outpatient treatment. We've seen more patients and held more benefits hearings than in any previous year in VA's history, a result of our goal to make sure vets get their care and benefits on time, every time. And our cemeteries not only stayed open during the pandemic, but expanded to 6 new locations. All in all, we're providing more care and more services and more benefits to more veterans than ever before. I'll say it again. More care and more benefits to more veterans than ever before. So we're not trying to build a VA that goes back. We're going to continue to do better for vets. We're going to continue to be better for vets. And we're doing it by driving toward the 4 fundamental principles that shape our vision for the future: advocacy, access, outcomes, and excellence. Advocacy. You know, I can't very well talk about advocacy without talking about VVA. As I said a moment ago, VVA advocacy is behind so much and so much good for veterans. When it comes to advocacy, we're following your lead to make sure that VA is the nation's premier advocate for veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. And advocacy starts at the top. Our shared mission could not be a higher priority for this administration, nor closer to President Biden's heart. When the president nominated me to lead VA, he told me to fight like hell for our vets. Not some vets, for our vets. That's exactly what we're doing, and the whole administration is doing the same. Delivering for our vets with the Save Lives Act I mentioned earlier, with the American Rescue Plan, which allocated $17 billion to help us care for vets during the pandemic, And with the proposed reconciliation package that will provide $5 billion to help vets thrive in the future. God willing, it will get voted on this afternoon. But advocacy doesn't mean much if vets don't use the benefits they've earned, which is where you come in. For many vets and service members, your network of veteran service officers across the country are their introduction to the benefits that they've earned. You're the ones sitting across the table from them, their surviving spouses or their dependents. So I remain committed to working with you to improve access for those we serve. So access. We'll move heaven and earth to get veterans timely, I underscore timely, access to their VA resources. Their VA resources. A major part of that equation is making sure that veterans have the best possible experience wherever they access VA benefits or services, at home, in the community, or in VA. So we're meeting vets where they are by expanding telehealth and teleappeals and by supporting our caregivers. Caregivers are not an afterthought for VA. They're a top priority. That's why I appointed Meg Cabot to sit in my office to be VA's first ever senior advisor for caregivers. And is why we look forward to expanding the program of comprehensive assistance to cover all caregivers as soon as possible. Now, I know there's concern about reevaluation requirements associated with Mission Act's expansion of the program of comprehensive assistance for caregivers, family caregivers. So I want to be clear on this as we look forward to the final expansion stage next October. Some veterans and family caregivers will need to be reevaluated on an annual basis for continued participation in the expanded program. Many legacy participants, that is, vets who entered the program before last October, haven't been reevaluated in years. Now, if the evaluation determines ineligibility, that is, if they do not meet the requirements for continued participation, then those veterans and caregivers will still receive those benefits for the next 15 months. That's 15 months longer, incidentally, than originally planned. And as we meet the legal obligations of Mission Act expansion, we're going to continue to make sure eligibility decisions are fair, equitable, consistent, no matter where vets get their care, no matter where and when they served. Next, I want to talk about veterans' outcomes. Outcomes drive everything we do because you, vets, that is, not VA, are the ultimate judges of our success. There's no more important outcome than preventing veteran suicide. Because one veteran who dies by suicide is one too many. Mental health services are critical for suicide prevention, so keeping services going during the pandemic has been one of my primary focuses. And vets have adopted seamlessly to telemental health sessions, attending millions of sessions already this year, more than doubling their total from all of 2020. And in the aftermath of the war in Afghanistan, we've reached out to every veteran in our network to remind them that their service matters and that we're here for them. You know, there's perhaps no more important outreach than what you Vietnam vets have done and can do for Afghanistan vets. I know many Vietnam vets are already doing this because I've heard from my pals. Tony Roman, a Purple Heart Vietnam vet who lives in San Antonio, said, "I don't want them to feel guilty. It was not their fault. They did their job." And that's exactly right. Tony remembers that you fought 2 wars, one over there, one over here. But thanks to veterans like Tony and all of you, Vets of two wars, as John intimated, of today's wars, don't fight two wars. That message was echoed by another Vietnam vet, Jim Jones, who addressed Afghanistan veterans in the Idaho Statesman. He wrote to Afghanistan vets, "Your country appreciates the unflinching service you provided in an effort to protect the American people and to make a better life possible for the Afghan people." So, I beg you, please, John, everyone, marshal your resources and forces and reach out to those Afghan vets. Put your arms around them. Point them to vet centers where you know they'll be well cared for because you built the vet centers. Point them to VA because we're standing by whether they want to speak to another veteran, talk to a therapist, call our crisis line at 800-273-8255. Text us at 838-255. Visit a vet center or access any of VA's mental health services online at mentalhealth.va.gov. Their mental health care, your mental health care, is health care. And it's one of our top priorities. Another major focus here is, as John said, toxic exposures, burn pits. And I know this is important to you and your families. We're not waiting for Congress to act on this. We're acting ourselves. And we've announced 3 major updates. First, we're creating new comprehensive decision-making model for determining presumptive conditions. A model guided by one core principle: getting vets the benefits they've earned and therefore deserve. Their benefits. These aren't ours. It's theirs. Second, we're proactively implementing provisions of last year's defense authorization bill. So, your buddies suffering from bladder cancer, hypothyroidism, Parkinsonism, due to Agent Orange, can now be paid the benefits they're owed. You don't have to reapply. If you've applied, we're already going at it. And third, we're presumptively paying disability benefits to veterans who suffer from asthma, sinusitis, and rhinitis as a result of their service in Southwest Asia, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan. We've been at war in that geography from Somalia to Uzbekistan. Afghanistan and Iraq right in the middle for 30 years. Vets have waited long enough for those benefits. We're doing everything in our power to make sure they don't have to wait a minute longer. And this is the beginning, not the end, of our efforts on toxic exposure. We're moving ahead with urgency, so those vets don't have to do what you did for decades. Lastly, on outcomes, we're laser focused on ending veteran homelessness. Early last month, I visited the encampment for homeless veterans that strikingly is just outside the West LA VAMC. A homeless encampment just outside one of the gems of the VA medical system. I know a lot of you know about it. They call it Veterans Row. I was deeply moved by what I saw. That night, 40 homeless vets living there. Tents. While I was walking through the camp that afternoon, I met a vet who needed housing and clearly needed help. That was a Wednesday. That night, our partners got him a hotel. By 10 a.m. Thursday, the next day, he was in housing in the West LA VA complex, the same complex I was visiting, receiving what every homeless vet in our care receives. That's help from the issues that led them to be homeless in the first instance. Substance use disorder, untreated mental health crisis, association with the justice system, joblessness. In LA, there are between 3,000 and 4,000 homeless vets just like him. Across the country, about 40,000 more. 580,000 non-vet homeless. It's our job to identify each and every one of them by name, to learn their stories, and to get them the help they need, the help that they were promised. So after I got back from LA, we announced 2 concrete steps that we're taking to address veterans' homelessness in LA. First, we said we'd get all those vets living on Vets Row housed by the end of October. By November 1, last Monday, we'd accomplished that. Thanks to some incredible efforts of VA people at the medical center and community partners working to make life better for veterans. That's a major step forward. It's an example for the rest of the country of what we can and must do for homeless vets. And it's an example of what we will do for homeless vets. Second, and a larger challenge, we're going to get an additional 500 homeless vets in LA housed by the end of the year, making sure that they're in homes for the holidays. It's not too much to ask. That's 57 days from now, and we're going to make it. You know, there's certain phrases in our language that shouldn't exist. One of those is homeless veteran. There should be no such thing as a homeless veteran. Not here, not in the greatest country on the face of the planet. So I assure you, through HUD-VASH, SSVF, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and more, we're going to do whatever it takes to get those vets into homes and to keep them there. Finally, excellence. We're seeking excellence in all we do for veterans by leveraging the strength and diversity that defines the veteran population, our VA workforce, and this amazing country. Our diversity is a strength, never a weakness. One of my first actions as VA Secretary was ordering a top-down review to determine how we can make VA a more welcoming place for LGBTQ plus veterans, women veterans, minority veterans, MST survivors, and more. Now, there's a lot to say here, but it boils down to this. For too long, too many vets who fought to protect our rights and freedoms, my rights and freedoms, have had to return home and fight brutal battles here for their own rights and freedoms. You know the deal. A lot of your battle buddies had to come home and fight those fights. Tragically, some of those fights continue to this day. But at VA, those fights are over. Let me repeat that. At VA, those fights are over. VVA has been engaged in this fight since the start. Your advocacy helped institute VA's Center for Minority Vets because of you and what you experienced and what you fought through. Earlier this week, I spoke to our first Other Than Honorable Discharge Summit. Here's a little what I shared. 2 quick points. Black airmen are 71% more likely to face court-martial than their white counterparts. And the numbers are equally shocking for black soldiers, Marines, sailors. More than 100,000 service members who were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell for who they are rather than the character of their service. When we talk about excellence and about diversity, that's the legacy we need to confront. When we talk about fighting like hell for vets, that's the fight. When the president assigned me to this job, he didn't say, fight like hell for some of the vets. He meant all vets. Vets of color, women vets, LGBTQ plus vets, vets with other than honorable discharges. Reforming how we care for vets with other than honorable discharges is long overdue. And this is just Summit 1.0. We're going to take what we learned from this first summit and expand the discussion to external stakeholders. With your help, we'll design an equitable process to ensure every veteran, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, orientation, has access to the benefits and services they've earned. So that's where VA is headed, continuing to deliver more care, more benefits, more services to more veterans than ever before, driven by advocacy, access, outcomes, and excellence. But we can't do it without you. Since Vietnam Veterans of America was founded, you've given us your leadership to help serve vets. We need it. We're grateful for it. And that's truer now than ever before. So this year on Veterans Day at VA, we're remembering and recognizing you and all the men and women who fought our nation's wars and defended us during periods of restless peace. And we're recommitting ourselves to honoring you, to renewing our obligation to fulfill President Lincoln's charge to care for those who shall have borne the battle, their families, caregivers, and survivors. Because Veterans Day is a day to honor veterans. It's a day to remember what they did for us. But it's also a call to action to serve them, to serve you, as well as you have served us. Not just on Veterans Day, but every day. And with your partnership, that's exactly what we'll do. Thank you for welcoming me. God bless you. God bless our nation's troops, our veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. And may I always give you what you have given this country, which is your very best. I thank you again.